Please give a warm welcome to Michelle Monroe.
A month after I turned 18, I got arrested at my college freshman orientation. It's funny now. The charge was minor in consumption of spirituous liquor, which is a very fancy way of saying I was caught with a Pacifico. I turned 18 in May, and the freshman orientation was in June in Tucson, so it was very hot. And it was at the University of Arizona, which I chose because it was a party school and I wanted the experience, and I got an experience. So I was outside the dorms with my friends. At orientation, the students sleep in the dorms and then the parents sleep in the hotels. And we were outside and we were all our new friends and we were all 18, except one guy who was 22, because he'd been in the military. And if you're 22 and you're trying to make friends with 18-year-olds, you buy them alcohol. And I think the first lesson I learned in college was if you're gonna break the law, you should do it inside. Because we were outside the dorm, and if you're gonna break the law outside, the odds of running into a cop are astronomical compared to inside. So he went next door, we were all hanging out, and he said, "Oh, I'll buy you guys beers." He went next door to the gas station, he bought the Pacifico, and he came back, handed them all out, we popped the tab. As soon as we popped the tab, the cops who were parked right across the street the whole time turned their sirens on. Woo! To this day, I still wonder what it feels like to have been them and have parked watching us. Like, they know we're here, right? Like, one of them will surely turn around and see us. We didn't. And so he turns the sirens on, woo! And my heart drops, and I start shaking, and I start crying immediately, because my life is over. And you know how some women cry with just like a single tear, and they're like, yes, 1,000 times yes. I don't cry like that. I cry like a walrus that's choking on peanut butter. So the cop comes over, and he's asking everyone for their ID, and I'm like, and he's like, "Ma'am, is this a medical emergency? Do we need to call an ambulance?" And I'm like, "It's just how I cry." And all my new friends are like, "Jesus Christ." So cool. And I didn't know what to do. Like, the cops left, and I went into the dorms, and I just knew I was gonna see my mom in the morning. And how do you tell your mom that you got arrested at orientation? So I didn't, which was really on brand for me at the time. Because just when I tell this story, remember I'm 18, so I'm like younger, thinner, blonder, both physically and spiritually. And I just went to orientation the next day and picked my major, and then changed my major, and then changed my major, and then changed my major. And I went back to Sacramento, and at some point I knew I was gonna have to tell my parents. But while this was not my first time breaking the law, it was my first time getting caught. So I didn't know how to break it to them, because my parents had raised us with a very basic set of rules, which are if you can just avoid the 3 Ps, you're gonna be okay. And the 3 Ps were prison, pregnancy, and paralysis. The bar was low, you know? And in high school, I had been an honors student, and I'd been a cheerleader and a prom court princess, just like the worst person you've ever met. And I was also secretly ditching class and doing drugs and drinking, but never those worlds met. And then I went to freshman, and I thought I'd done great. And then I went to orientation, and I learned a lot of lessons. So I had to tell my dad I got arrested at freshman orientation, and he was like, "That's the first P." I did not go to prison, but I did go to court. And I just was so 18 and naive, I didn't get a lawyer. I was like, I'll just fly to Tucson, I'll explain what happened, and everything will be okay. And so I went to Tucson, and I dressed probably just like this. And I was like, Your Honor, the charge was minor in consumption of spirituous liquor. I never consumed the alcohol. We popped the tab, woo, put the beer on the ground, cry immediately. And then the police officer was there, and he testified under oath, and he testified that he could smell the alcohol coming off my breath that night. And I was like, cops lie? My little worldview. Like, what? So I was convicted. And then Tucson has a diversion program. So you paid like $300, and then you took a class. And the class was 1 day a week for 2 weeks. The first week, you watched 28 Days featuring Sandra Bullock, where she goes to rehab after she drives drunk. And then the second week, you discuss 28 Days, because Tucson is an A+ diversion program. And the worst part is, I had to skip one of the weeks, so I just watched 28 Days twice. And then I just thought, that was good. All my friends had their records expunged after this, and so I went, clean slate, all good, or so I thought. And then 4 years later, I graduated. I was applying to my first jobs. I was filling out applications. You know that part of the application where they're like, hey, have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor? I was like, no. And then I got a job offer, and they ran a background check. And then they rescinded the job offer because they said I lied on my application, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And in California, you can request a copy of your background check. So I got a background check, and I was reading it over. It's probably the closest I'll ever come to knowing what it feels like to be a man who does 23andMe and finds out he has a kid. Because you're like, what? You exist? I paid $300 for you to go away. We had a deal. Which is unfair. That's something you can do at 18 can follow you for the rest of your life. Because, a lot of your mistakes you can get removed. Tattoos, piercings, fetuses. And relax, I didn't do any of those. But no, I definitely went through high school, and they were like, if you ditch classes, go on your permanent record. I was like, there's no such thing. But your criminal record is a permanent record that I found out. So now when I apply to jobs, and it says, have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor? I have to say yes. And then I add a little note. And I say, but it is a crime I can never again be convicted of, because I am well above the drinking age. And then me and the HR people have a little giggle. And they're like, okay, your orientation's this day, also don't get arrested at that one. And they're like, I liked your little note. I'm like, thanks, I do comedy. And then the last job that I applied to was a really intense application. It said, have you ever been convicted of a misdemeanor? And I said, yes. And I wrote my little jokey joke. And then they said, can you put the date of the arrest? I was like, I have no idea. 2008. And I was so ruined because of the first job rescinding that they had. So I was looking up what 2008 college freshman orientation, U of A, no date. I actually used to be a journalist, and I asked one of my old coworkers, hey, could you look up the record in Arizona for my arrest? No record. I went on the Tucson court system, no record. I went on the Pima County, no record. Turns out it's such a lame arrest that they just don't care. So you can't like look it up 16 years later. So I wrote like June 2008, and then in the notes I was like, I can't remember the date. This isn't because I'm trying to lie. It was 16 years ago. I don't remember. Please still hire me. And I turned it all in. They ran the background check. It came up. The date's on there. Thank God. And then I got an email from HR that said, hey, do you have any additional details, Miss Monroe? I was like, college, orientation. The beer was Pacifico? And I got the job. Thank you very much, guys.